And we're live.
Well, good afternoon, Mesa Public Schools. I'm Andy Forlis, the very proud superintendent of this amazing school district. Today, we are going to be talking about the learning models that we are going to be offering next school year. And as always, I've got some pretty amazing guests with me that are experts and practitioners at the same time. We have Dr. Tracy Eastlis. She is our assistant superintendent for teaching and learning. She is coordinating much of the work behind the scenes, providing a lot of training and curriculum and structures around what these learning models look like with her team. We have Mrs. Amy Breitenbucher. She is the principal at Kerr Elementary School. She is taking a look at this through that elementary school lens. And so I know that many of you are going to have questions around what does this look like at an elementary school specifically? So Mrs. Breitenbucher can give you some of those examples. And then we also have Mr. Adam Unrein. Mr. Unrein is the principal at Smith Junior High. He also has high school experience prior to being at Smith Junior High. He was at Skyline. So we've got that secondary perspective joining us today. And I think what's important to know is that not only are these three educational leaders in Mesa Public Schools, these are community members that have a vested interest in the East Valley and very specific to Mesa Public Schools. They've had kids that have graduated from our district, and so they know what it's like to be thinking and planning for their children. So I want to open it up by saying thank you very much for joining me today. And we are going to kick it off with our first question, which is, and I think this one might be the best, Dr. Eastlis, if you don't mind taking our first question, which is, what are next year's learning models? And what is important for me to know about each learning model in order for me to make the best choice for my child?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Forlis. So next year, we are going to have three very distinct learning models. The first one most of you are familiar with, and that's going to be what we call our on-campus, or sometimes it's referred to as brick and mortar. It's what you know right now, where kids are attending typically your home school where you live, and it's pre-K through 12th grade, and it follows our district Mesa Public Schools calendar. It has our typical bell schedule with a stop and start time. In our elementary, your kids have a teacher that they see for all of their content areas and their specials. They rotate, and then in our junior high and high school, they have multiple teachers for multiple classes on campus. Our next model that some of you may be familiar with is our Mesa Distance Learning Program or Mesa Digital Learning Program. And that is a virtual model where students can take courses 4th through 12th grade and work at their own pace. So there's not a traditional bell schedule because they're working on their own, on the computer typically. They may check in with a teacher for some extra help or tutoring in a live lesson through the computer. And there's not a traditional calendar, so kids can enter that program at any time. And then our new model that we'll be opening for next year is our virtual campus model, and it will be kindergarten through 12th grade. And it will have, kids will have access to a live teacher. They'll be learning all day with live lessons and following that typical Mesa Public Schools calendar. They'll have their own bell schedule, a start and stop time each day. But it will be, again, through computer lessons online. And those students will be accessing that through our Canvas learning management system. And they will have access to all of their core content, so English, language arts, reading, writing, specials in the elementary and math. And then the secondary will have core content courses as well, but they will have a little bit more unique of a course catalog, offering electives that are best suited for an online environment. And they'll still be able to participate with what we call our homeschool, or the school that your student would have attended in a traditional brick and mortar campus. They can participate in after school or before school activities and things that the school's offering there, but their schedule will be online.
Wow, thank you so much. There's a lot of options. So our goal is to make sure that there's viable choices for all families to make a decision for their children. And families, you know that you had what we are calling an interest survey that you received where you were able to select at this time, what would you be most interested in? So you're probably wondering, what is the results of that survey, and why did you take one now? We know that our principals, just like Mr. Unrein and Mrs. Breitenbucher, they are busy planning. They are tidying up this year, and they're already planning for the next year. They're looking at their staffing. They're taking a look at how many teachers that they're going to need. So that interest survey is what we are going to use for planning. But as we move forward, at the end of April, you are going to have an opportunity to confirm your choice. So if you're kind of on the fence and you said, this is what's sounding good to me right now, please know that in the next few weeks, you will be receiving another survey, and that will be that confirmation survey. And so it's important that we get this Facebook Live message out so that you're able to ask questions and we're able to share that information with you. So let's think about let's think about what this would look like for a virtual campus. And I mentioned some data. Our preliminary data is that 95% of our families are saying, yeah, we want that on-campus, in-person learning. 5% or 4.5% or so are saying they would like the virtual campus where they have the live teacher, but they're learning from home. And about 1%, 1.5% are choosing the Mesa digital learning program. So we know that there's quite a few. Well, the significant amount are looking at the on-campus model, but we want to have an opportunity to share with you more detail about the virtual campus. So here's a question. I'm learning towards virtual campus learning, but I want to make sure my child gets a full day of instruction. Will on-campus learning teachers also teach virtual students? So maybe that's something for Mr. Unrein. You want to tackle that question from the secondary level?
Sure. And I think a good question to pose back, just to clarify for those that are watching, is, we went through this time where teachers were trying to teach in-person students and remote students live at the same time. So that was very challenging for our in-person students and those students that are remote. It was a huge equity issue for kids that were at home. It's just hard. You start forgetting that there's kids remote and there's behaviors in the classroom that you have to tackle. So no, it should be pure. And then, does that clarify what we're driving towards, Dr. Forless?
Yeah, you got it, Mr. Unrein. Absolutely.
Okay. Perfect. So yeah, we wound up redoing our schedule 3 times, our master schedule, because we tried it. The teachers said, I want to keep my kids. I built relationships with them. And so it was a learning process, and we tried it, but it just was too much of a challenge. So we have to dedicate all of our time to those that are either in front of us or those that are remote. So it should be one or the other, because teaching remote is, or, a kid is on a computer, it's a completely different animal. There are some shifts that need to happen from the teacher's end to increase that engagement for those students that are tuning in with their computers.
And Mr. Unrein, you use that word should. And I think that's important because at our high schools, we might have some very specialized courses that we might have to do some concurrent teaching. And if that is the case, then we will be making we will make sure that they have the equipment that they need. But that is very, very rare. That's not the norm at all. So it might just be an unusual case. So thank you so much. Okay. Mrs. Breitenbucher, we're going to jump into another question. Will schools have in-person beginning of the year events like meet the teacher, orientation, all of those good things? So talk to us about what that might look like at Kerr Elementary as we open up the new school year.
Dr. Forless, this probably was one of the more difficult pieces at the elementary level this year, especially with our incoming kindergartners and our littles. And having parents who desperately wanted to come onto campus and see their child's classroom and see what it is. And while we were able to meet those needs through the virtual environment and have virtual orientations and pieces like that, it was difficult. So now what Mesa has done is really looked at the science of what's going on and how things are going, and looking at next year, I think we would be moving towards being able to welcome people back onto campus campus and have those face-to-face interactions and be able to bring in the community so that they can see the wonderful things that we are doing in person. Of course, you know, as things change, we are always going to pivot and change. I am very much looking forward to having events like that on current campus for our elementary kiddos and the parents.
What might that be looking like at Smith Junior High, Mr. Unrein?
Or so, you know, we always want to have, whether it's or meet the teacher night, opportunities for clubs to really promote what they do, sports programs. Obviously, we don't know what the mitigation strategies will look like at that point in time, but ultimately that we want to get the kids connected back into campus. We've got, as a junior high, we have to really feed into a high school, so we want to open that up also. We only have kids for 2 years, so we're constantly inviting Skyline down where their dance program, they might have a performance here so that those kids can access and see what those options are at the secondary level, because let's face it, they're with us for 2 years and then it's 4 years and they have a trajectory. So we want to give them a wide offering of courses, electives, but we also want to bring the secondary Skyline onto campus to promote some programs. And as well as business partnerships, guest speakers, so that kids can have a really comprehensive experience when they're on campus.
You know, that's great talking about the connection of that K-12 continuum, and our junior highs are that intermediary position where students are transitioning from elementary to junior high and then on to high school. Our last Facebook Live, we talked about our summer academy offerings. And one of the things that I really love that is going to happen this year is that the sixth graders at their elementary schools are going to be able to attend the summer academies at their incoming junior high. That is one way to build that bridge, build that relationship, and to create some familiarity for them. So I think that that's one of our innovations that I think that will continue as we move forward. I think we're going to find great success. The same with our current eighth graders. They will be able to attend the summer academies at their high school, giving them a leg up and a jump up around what does it look like to transition to that next school and to that next grade level. So I think it's important as we think about orientations and opening up our schools, it's really about building those relationships and safe spaces for children. So maybe this one's good for you, Dr. Aislis. When do I get to make my final decision about the best learning model for my child? Or many of us have more than one child, and you might have a different learning model for each child. Based on their unique learning styles and needs within their life. So when do I get to make my final decision? And then what happens if I change my mind over the summer?
Yeah, so Dr. Forlis mentioned earlier that by the end of April, you'll be selecting what that best learning model looks like for you and your children. But if you decide that over the summer you have a change in mind for maybe one of your kids or all of your kids, we are going to be as flexible as possible. We have to work within how we've staffed based on those interest surveys and then your selection at the end of this year. And so we'll be as flexible as we can and allow you to change at, when you have a change of heart. But again, we'll have to look at the staffing and the space available. So hoping to meet all of our needs and all of your kids' needs.
Would you like either one of our principals like to add on to that about what that might look like at an elementary level or at a secondary level?
Sure, I would love to. So, you know, looking at our models and especially going through this year of having kiddos that are remote, and especially right now, we have quite a few Kirk kids that are coming back to the in-person learning. And I know that the staffing piece is difficult, but I will say that most schools are being so incredibly accommodating, getting students back in person and finishing out the year in the in-person model. So looking at next year, I believe that schools will be as flexible as possible as we have to pivot and change throughout another year.
You know, there's some pretty creative ideas that principals have worked around as well to try to accommodate the very best that they can. So absolutely applaud that work. Would you like to add on to that, Mr. Unrein?
Yeah, you know, we serve the community. So we try and work with families. Every family has unique needs, and yes, we allocate classroom sizes and staffing to teach certain courses, whether it was in person or remote. But there's flexibility there, and every case is unique. For us this year, we had to have 4 lunches so that kids could be spaced out 6 feet apart, which created some scheduling complications. It wasn't as simple as periods 1, 2, 3, 4 and then lunch 5. But we accommodated every opportunity we could. Even if there was a little bit of disequilibrium, we want to make sure that obviously our safety measures are in place. But if a family had something come up and they had to go remote due to some medical issues and worry about the kid coming home, whether he's asymptomatic or not, we accommodated everyone that gave us a call.
Excellent. And then I'm going to move on to a couple of questions that are coming from our community. The first one is, will there still be 2-hour early release on Wednesdays? Who would like to take that one? I think everybody's leaning in to take. Do you want to take it, Dr. Eastlis?
Sure, we will be sticking with our early release Wednesdays as we've done this year, especially with all of the new learning models and strategies that teachers have had to take on during this pandemic. We have found that those are very, very valuable in regard to our teams working together and sharing strategies and receiving some professional learning, and that's when that happens. And so we will be continuing with our early release Wednesday schedule as you know it today.
Thank you so much. That time that teachers have, especially during this year of disruptive year of learning, around how are they going to respond to the ever-changing nature of what this pandemic brought to us. Not only to think about the academic needs of our students, but also to think about the social emotional wellness of our children. That has been an important part, and for us to be able to take care and check in with our staff as well. So it's a strategy around taking care of people, because we are a people organization that takes care of other people. And so we need to make sure that we're being thoughtful about the professional learning as well as meeting the needs of all. And then we've got another question that is coming in from the community. And Mr. Unrein, you tapped into this a bit. Will mask requirements and classroom distancing measures be in place? So maybe you can talk a little bit about what you're planning for, what you're thinking about at the school level. I'll just start off by saying that public education, public schools are under a whole lot of guidance. We have guidance from our governor. We have guidance for the Arizona Department of Education. And currently, the guidance is that we are mandating masks inside of classrooms and physical distancing to the best extent possible. And that's important language. You heard Mr. Unrein talk about what he had to do around creating lunch schedules. So it's to the very best extent possible around physical distancing. As soon as guidance to public schools changes, Mesa Public Schools will be right in step with making those changes. So we watch for that guidance regularly, and we communicate it quickly, and we put plans into place as quickly as we possibly can. So do you want to talk a little bit about physical distancing, some of the things that have worked? Let's start at an elementary level and then on to secondary.
Sure. At the elementary level, we have a ton of visuals, and if anybody's seen even the outside of a campus, you can see all of the signage that is everywhere. When you enter an elementary school campus, everything is marked very clearly. So here's a sticker where you should be standing when you're lining up for each student. When you go into the lunchroom, there are stickers on our benches. Here's where you're sitting on this sticker, you're going to sit on this sticker, and we're socially distancing that way. There are big arrows across our campus of you're going to walk in this direction if you're going to this place, and you're going to be walking in this direction if you need to go to another place. And I will say the students have just done a dynamite job of being able to pick up on these new procedures to keep everybody safe. And one of the pieces that I really enjoyed seeing is the sense of caring and community that these students have really taken on during this pandemic. They have taken their job to keep everybody safe very seriously. And it is, and it's a large part to the procedures that Mesa Public Schools had put into place and the protocols for safety mitigation on an early part of this year. So it is really neat to see.
Want to add on to that, Mr. Andrine, give us a little snapshot into what junior high looks like during a pandemic in terms of mitigation.
It's crazy. I'm kidding. It's been really good. All the signage, Mesa Public Schools has been extremely responsive. Whether it was having plexiglass come up, the signage around campus, being very clear with the protocols. The kids have responded well. In the hallways, junior high, they're social beings, but we have arrows. So it's like a road. On the right-hand side, you are heading one direction. On the other side, you're heading the other direction. During passing period, I expect teachers out in the hallway to help monitor student behaviors, just to make sure that kids aren't hugging and running around with masks off. And the kids have been great. It's not, we don't bat 1,000 every day. They're kids, but that's it. They're kids. So they respond well when you say, hey, make sure that you got your mask up. That to be with junior high, they're rotating around. So the last 3-4 minutes, you can see it. Teachers are going to say, all right, let's close it up. Teacher comes around and sprays each desk with our sanitizer spray, and the kids wipe that up. They throw that out on the way to their next classroom. We've tried to provide mask breaks throughout the day. It's a challenge for having kids wear a mask all day. So it's been good. You see them get out and be able to take the mask off, and I get to see what some of the kids look like, because some of our 7th graders, I haven't really seen other than them wearing a mask. So it's good to get out during mask breaks and kind of see the other half of their faces.
Thank you so much. It's great to be able to get a sense of what this looks like, kindergarten to 8th grade and then beyond. We've got another question coming in around, will there be a cap on how many students are allowed in person? So I guess I'm thinking about that question probably be best answered around what we would anticipate class size looks like for an in-person experience. So we'll start with the elementary, then jump on to the secondary.
So looking at our numbers for next year, I think we're going to be following the regular typical numbers for Mesa Public Schools. Of course, those are lower in the elementary school because of the specific needs that elementary school students need. But moving back to the safety and mitigation pieces, if you were able to come onto the campus, you would see that the desks are placed in very specific and purposeful rows with the mitigation pieces of the 3 to 6 feet between each desk. And so when we look at class sizes, we have some pretty large classrooms, and so we are able to safely mitigate and distance students as we get more students on our campuses. And that's one thing that we have experienced as we have had an influx of students coming back onto Kerr Elementary's campus as, we need more desks, we need more spacers. And so being able to adjust and modify as we go to make those changes.
Mr. Unrein, anything you want to add on to that?
Yeah, just, in the junior high levels, we're going to have fewer elective classes, and we want to try to make sure that students have their first choice for their electives. And, ultimately, I want them to have a broad experience and try as many different elective courses that they can. So there is a fluctuation sometimes in class sizes. Your PE classes might be a little bit larger, but they can spread out, whether it's in the gym or out in the fields. The other classes, we try to keep, our staffing is really based on a 1 to 30 ratio. So, a teacher should be able to serve 150 students through the day. There's some fluctuation there, but, at the end of the day, we try to get kids placed for the electives that they want. And then also, do they have any specific support needs, whether that's the individualized instruction. If it's a resource class, those are obviously a little bit smaller. So there's a lot of flexibility with those classes and their sizes, but funding wise, we're looking at a 1 to 30 ratio.
Thank you so much. And that kind of gives a sense of what a classroom space would look and sound like for maybe some families that have not come back to in-person learning yet. So let's think a little bit about preschool. Dr. Eastlis is very involved in preschool programming. So what is that going to look like as we open up the new school year?
Yeah, so preschool will be in person as well and following all of the same mitigation strategies. We know that in-person learning for preschool is the best place for them because they have so many tactile needs. They're learning how to get along with others and again are really social creatures. So we will be offering in-person preschool at a variety of our campuses. And again, following the mitigation strategies that are in play at that time and doing as much physical distancing as we can. We are under the executive order for our students to be wearing masks too. And we know that's a challenge for our littles, but we do the best that we can to work with them and give them lots of mask breaks as well. And we have a variety of programming and choices for all of our families. So if you are interested in what those different programming models look like and where those preschool programs are, please visit our website at mpsaz.org/kinderu.
Excellent. We've covered the gamut from preschool all the way through secondary education. Um, Here's a question that has come through, and it is, I'm going to kind of frame this a little bit. Can there be free after school care on Wednesdays for early release? So hang on to that question for just a moment, because another really good question follows up with that, asking, and will you share how you are using your ESSER 2 money? So let me talk a little bit about the ESSER funds, and then I can also talk about after school care. So the ESSER fund, some of you might know that we've been reading and hearing about the American Rescue Plan. From the American Rescue Plan, schools are allocated what is called ESSER funds, and that is an acronym that has a whole lot to do with education recovery. So in Mesa Public Schools, we have 3 installments. We have received the first installment, the second installment, and then we are waiting on the third. So our first installment was about $17 million. Our second was about less than just shy of $70 million. And our third installment is $161 million. That is a significant amount of money. And that money is calculated based on the level of poverty within our school district. So we have more funds coming to us than our surrounding different districts, because we know that we have got to provide additional resources because of the challenges that many of our families have experienced through COVID. So what we have to ask ourselves about these funds is, and this is a question that I ask myself all of the time, what will be different in Mesa Public Schools as a result of this significant investment? So we have to be thinking about what will be different. When we look at these funds, we need to expend them by 2024. They're one-time funds. We will not continue to receive them. We have to be very strategic about how we spend them. So we will have a faculty and staff and community engagement, where we are going to be sharing the high priorities of what our plan will look like, and we are going to be asking for feedback, because we know that there are a lot of great ideas in our community and through our staff to be able to share back with us about what is most important. And we've got to make sure that we are meeting the high priority needs of our community. So I can give you some big buckets or some big ideas and categories of how those funds will be spent. They will be spent on the social and emotional wellness of our children. They will be spent on providing academic opportunities. A perfect example is our summer academies. All of our summer academy work will be funded through these ESSER funds, because that is to establish relationship, rebuild relationship, and provide academic supports for students as they need them to gear up for the new academic year. So that connects to after school care. If we go out to our community, and one of the top priorities is that Wednesdays during early release, that our families would like to see our students having an opportunity to have a low to no cost enrichment on Wednesdays, that could be something that we allocate our ESSER funds to. And so we know that would be short term, that would last until 2024. So then we have to think about what would we want to sustain from that. And we would hope that it would be building up those social, emotional, and academic skills. We also know that we can invest in innovation. For many years, we've been asking ourselves and telling ourselves in the education space that, many of the things that we do just are no longer relevant. How do we change what we're doing? And so there are funds to be able to try some new ideas and to see what sticks to move forward as we meet the needs of our very, very diverse and ever-changing community. We also know that we can invest our funds in capital. So an example in the world of COVID would be we could invest in air quality. So we could think about what would it look like? What would it sound like? What are the investments that we would need to make sure that we have high quality air quality? How you like that one? That we would have we would focus on air quality, looking at our air conditioning systems, our ventilation systems, and to make sure that that is something that we can use ESSER funds. So we go to our community, we go to our staff, and we say, how much of a priority is that for you? And then that will help to drive what our ESSER plan looks like. Now, ESSER plan doesn't sound very exciting and it doesn't roll off of our tongue. So we also will be naming our plan and giving it a name that leads to the vision of what we want those funds to be able to do for us. So stay tuned. You might have great ideas about what that name could be. Feel free to share them with us. So lots of information. We feel, we do have a huge attitude of gratitude around the funds that are coming into Mesa Public Schools. And we know that from our taxpayers to our federal government entrusts us with using these funds wisely to make a difference and improve the quality of life of our children and our communities. So we take that very, very seriously. I'm going to check on questions one more time. Bit of detail, I'm looking at our time, a little bit of a detail on a cap on how many students are allowed in person. We talked about class size, but we're looking at a cap on a campus. We've not had any conversations about the number of students on a campus, but our principals are very wise around keeping class sizes appropriate for learning and appropriate for teaching. And so that's where we might have to be creative and say, we need for you to wait till next semester to come in because we might have some changes in staffing. So I think that we've gotten through all of our questions today. There's a lot of information to talk about, not only about finishing this academic year strong, but making sure that we're ready for our children as we open up our doors again in August. Boy, and April, look for that final survey. We appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us. And to our leaders of Mesa Public Schools, Adam and Amy and Tracy, I appreciate you all so much. Thanks for being here. Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.